The people of Moldova have firmly rejected Russian influence in their elections. But is the truth far closer than anyone could have appreciated? And more importantly, is Russia already rolling out the cope, trying to create some kind of fake election misinformation? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Hit that subscribe. Let's talk about it. All right, so this is a good news story because Russia is furious over Moldova's elections because the pro-EU government has scored a massive win. In fact, Moldova's current ruling party, a pro-EU party, pulled way ahead of its Russian-leaning rival in a crucial parliamentary election as the final results trickled in, ultimately proving that no amount of shitty TikToks and Russian-backed fake news is a substitute for actual political governance, at least in Moldova. Moldova, of course, trying to keep the country out of Moscow's orbit. With 93% of the votes counted, the Party of Action and Solidarity had 47% of the vote, with just 27% for the Russian-backed bloc. The other parties, are also pretty spread, but this, again, has been billed as one of the most consequential elections in Moldova. And what I think is so important is just how badly defeated the pro-Russian bloc is. And to understand, the patriotic bloc is funded almost entirely by a dual citizen who's reportedly laundered something to the tune of $8 or $9 billion through cryptocurrencies in order to circumvent sanctions and fund these kind of Moldovan disinformation operations. We talked about the fact on this channel that for a lot of Moldovans, they actually were getting paid sometimes $200 or $300 a month as basically a side hustle to push these pro-Russian messages on behalf of the pro-Russian candidates. And again, this is not really election interference because Moldovans do have free speech and the government isn't going to sanction them per se, but bribing people to produce political ads is something that, again, is illegal almost everywhere for this exact reason, because it can be used by foreign governments to sort of influence these operations. And the fact that the Moldovan people stood up to this is a huge testament to the fact that, they're taking Russian aggression much more seriously. And there's an understanding that you have to strike a balance between preserving a free and competitive elections and not allowing your adversaries like Russia to promote utterly fake stories, right? One of the fake stories was that as a requirement for EU membership, a certain number of Moldovans would have to turn LGBT. Russians love that kind of stuff, which of course is sort of comical because the EU has plenty of very right-wing countries like Hungary and Viktor Orban in Hungary and Robert Fico in Slovakia. So it's definitely not a requirement. But that doesn't mean the Kremlin doesn't have a backup plan, right? Because, yeah, the Kremlin would have loved to have won, but just like with the U.S. and the MAGA movement, having a segment of the country, a significant segment of the population of a country, feel resentful, believe they've been cheated, believe those elections were fake or stolen, that's really valuable stuff. And so the Kremlin is already rolling it out, right? This time they're claiming that the Kremlin says, listen, the Moldovans don't have any record of this, but believe it or not, the Russian government, actually say that hundreds of thousands of Moldovans are living in Russia. And while you Moldovans may not know about it, these secret Moldovans were prevented from voting in an important parliamentary elections because there weren't enough polling stations in the country. Now, Dmitry Peskov said that there were hundreds of thousands of Moldovans. By the way, the entire country of Moldova is about 2.5 million people. So hundreds of thousands is like the equivalent of like 4 U.S. states, all right, living in Canada. So it's not something you could like sort of hide, right? Now, again, Peskov says hundreds of thousands of Moldovans were deprived of the opportunity to vote in the Russian Federation due to the fact that only 2 polling stations were open to them. Right. Reportedly, there were about 4,000 votes cast inside of Russia. One of the things that Moldovan government said was that, there were they provided the voting stations that people wanted, but also the security situation in Russia has really regressed. Moldovan citizens living in Germany, for example, cast about 40,000 votes at 36 different polling stations. Now, here's the problem. The problem, as always, that sounds like a really convincing story. Wow, 500,000 Moldovan citizens in Russia, and only 2 polling stations, and only 4,000 were able to vote, and Germany had 36. Sounds pretty brazen, but in reality, it's a little different because Moldovans in Russia are Russian citizens and labor migrants. But according to let's see, at the end of the 2018 presidents of Russia and Moldova. Here we go. Let's see if we can find it here. Right now, according to the 2021 Russian census, there were only 77,000 Moldovans living in Russia. Right now, Russia has claimed in 2010 that there were 150,000 Moldovans in Russia, as well as a bunch of ethnic Moldovans, illegal migrants, labor migrants, but nowhere in here, right? In 2002, there were reportedly about 200,000 Moldovan legal residents in Russia. So you can see that Russians have actually worked tirelessly to kick out the Moldovans. Again, dropping their numbers to as low as 77,000. And that was before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, where Russia became heavily sanctioned by countries, including Moldova. So it's very, very doubtful. Now, Russia says, but don't worry, guys, there's these 200,000 illegal residents of illegal Moldovans here. We swear they're there. They don't have any paperwork. They don't have any permits, but they're totally here. And we only gave 33,000 of them work permits, but there's definitely more. And that just, of course, is a very convenient amount because it would be enough to sway elections. And well, it's almost certainly not true. In fact, there was even an amnesty law in 2018 that would allow Moldovan citizens to return to Moldova. All of this is just, it's transparent that this is something that the Russians just made up. There are no 500,000 Moldovans in Russia. They just made it the hell up in order to basically create this, in order to basically force the Moldovans to put a bunch of polling stations into Russia and then not be shocked when they see, 500,000 votes all for a pro-Russian party. That would have been enough in this election to sway the elections towards the pro-Russian side. So it's pretty transparent that the Moldovan elections were free and fair and that the Russians are just making shit up, right? So anyway, guys, I appreciate it. I'm going to continue to cover these kinds of stories. And I appreciate your guys' ability to help me out and become members at combatvetnews.com. It works just like Patreon. The link is in the description. And you can get any one of these tiers, get access to uncensored combat videos sent to me straight from the front lines, including from units who do this, including from drone units, right? Who literally, I have like 3 videos from them actually striking or intercepting Russian attack drones using equipment that we've provided them. So if you love that stuff and you want to support me, Combat Vet News is the place. Thanks to AL90, James Porsche, Steve Moran, Doug Beck, William Alex, Henry Roussier, all of our Lieutenant tier members. And remember, you can still support me. Just send us a message if you don't want to be on this list. I understand politically it can be uncomfortable to put your name out here as a supporter of this channel, but I appreciate those of you that do. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.